Hello everyone. Today we're going to make copper iodide, and then I'll show you how you can use it to test for mercury. To begin, you're going to need the following: 25 grams of copper sulfate penhydrate, which is the blue compound, 83 grams of potassium iodide, which is the white compound, along with a beaker and 150 milliliters of water. Go ahead and add the copper sulfate to the beaker of water and add a stir bar. Place the beaker on a magnetic hot plate and turn to medium heat with stirring. It usually takes a few minutes to fully dissolve, so we'll fast forward through that part. Alternatively, you can heat without stirring and it will also dissolve, but it will take longer. Once it's all dissolved, you're ready to move on to the next step. We're about to add the potassium iodide to the copper sulfate solution. However, this produces iodine gas and needs to be done in a fume hood or outside. I thought I would try to capture the iodide as it escapes with a round bottom flask with ice. So with the stir bar stirring, add the potassium iodide to the solution. As you can see, it immediately changes from a blue color to a dark black. No gas was produced, probably because I used too much water. However, that's not a problem. I can remove the iodine from the water later. I let this sit and stir for a few minutes to be sure that everything had fully reacted. After you feel enough mixing time has elapsed, turn off the heat and stirring and let the beaker come to room temperature. You may notice that the copper iodide will start to settle on the bottom of the beaker. No problem, we're about to filter it anyway. So go ahead and set up your filtration system and slowly start adding the copper iodide solution. The blood color of the iodine makes this filtration interesting to watch. Be sure to rinse out the beaker with water and try to get all the copper iodide out. You can see that right now the copper iodide has a tan color. For us to use this to test for mercury, we will need to have it really pure. We need a white powder. This will be obtained by very thoroughly washing it. Okay, we have our very pure copper iodide. Now we want to make our mercury test paper. Remove the copper iodide from the filter flask and place it in a clean beaker and add water. Add enough water to give a milk-like consistency. Now reset up your filter system and add filter paper. Wet it so that you get a good seal. And now pour in some of the copper iodide solution. Just enough to cover the paper. What we're trying to do is evenly deposit copper iodide on the filter paper. We don't need a lot, just a thin layer. Now grab a tool like a spatula and grab a corner. I'm having a little bit of trouble finding one to grab. There we go. I'll use some tweezers and pull out the filter paper. Now you can reset up and repeat, and make as many test papers as you want. After you pull out the filter paper, place them on something flat to dry. When you have all the test papers, add one more filter paper and dump in all the rest of the copper iodide. Filter off the water and set aside to dry and store for later use. As you can see, I've made 3 test papers. So here's how you use them to test for mercury. First, place one on a watch glass, and then place the watch glass on a hot plate set to medium heat. Leave it there until it is dry. Now you'll need something to test. I'm going to just use mercury, but whatever you plan to test you will need to place in a beaker and then heat it on a hot plate. Place the test paper over the beaker just like this. The heat will evolve mercury vapors, which will react with the copper iodide to form copper tetraiodomercurate, a brown to black compound. If your item to be tested is in a clear liquid form, then you can place it in a test tube and add copper iodide and check for a color change. So that is how you use copper iodide to test for mercury. Please be very careful with any sample that could contain mercury, as mercury is highly dangerous. Well, until next time, thanks for watching.